Brony fandom is widely regarded as one of the most controversial and hated fandoms on the entire internet. Sure, there are some other hated fandoms like the furry fandom or the My Hero Academia fandom, but the Brony fandom really takes the cake for being the most hated fandom out of both I just mentioned. It's been through so much, from gore art and animations to weird fetishes and just plain degeneracy in general, and in this video, I will be covering a lot of it. So strap in, ladies and gentlemen, as we take a look at a history of trauma, degeneracy, and more. Enjoy the video. In 2010, Hasbro released a new cartoon titled My Little Pony: Friendship is Magic, which garnered a massive following upon the release of the first episode, mainly little girls aged 6 to 12 years old. However, boys seemed to like the show too, which eventually led to the fandom forming. The fandom first started on 4chan, where people would post and talk about My Little Pony, and began referring to themselves as Pony Bros, which was later shortened to Brony. Bronies were male adult fans of My Little Pony, usually aged around 18 to 27 years old and the fandom started getting so many members to the point where Brony conventions started happening, with the first one happening in 2011. There were many fan art pieces being pushed out, many animations being made, etc. However, then the fandom began pushing out rather questionable content, whether it be not safe for work art, gore art / animations, and more. Later, creepypasta fanfiction known as Cupcakes was posted, and many people read it, and it was shocking to say the least. Eventually, it was found and picked up by MLP animator Mr. Davey, to where he made an animation that would go on to be one of the most infamous animations in the fandom. The animation opened all cutesy and adorable, with the characters Rainbow Dash and Pinkie Pie dancing and adding cupcake ingredients into bowls, before Rainbow Dash is knocked out by Pinkie Pie. She wakes up strapped to an operating table as Pinkie Pie threw on a light, revved up a chainsaw, and uses it to cut off her wings. The rest of the animation is a 7 to 6 minute animation of Pinkie Pie violently torturing Rainbow Dash, which I literally cannot show because YouTube will probably get mad at me, and the animation ends with Pinkie Pie showing us the bloody cupcakes. This animation, heck, Mr. Davies' entire channel was later deleted after Hasbro requested he take down the animation. There have been brief re-uploads of his videos, but most of them are basically considered lost media at this point in time. This wasn't even the only one either. There were multiple animation adaptations of this disturbing and depraved story, most of which aren't even age restricted despite showing massive amounts of gore. In this era of the Brony fandom, multiple Bronies would continue to make disturbing stories, animations, and fan art, a lot of which kids were unfortunate to see and mentally affect them in negative ways. Needless to say, these degenerates in the fandom were giving a lot of the fandom an extremely bad reputation, and it showed, as multiple friends of mine have told me about how much they were harassed because of the poor reputation the fandom was receiving at the time. One of the most infamous fanfics during this time was Rainbow Factory, a grimdark fanfic based on the song by Wooden Toaster of the same name, detailing a dark, unethical system of dealing with any Pegasus who doesn't pass their flying test. The Brony fandom latched onto this like leeches, with many readings of the fanfic being posted to YouTube, many alternate endings and fan-made sequels being made, and even another song based on the creepypasta titled Pegasus Device. It had gotten to the point where gore was alarmingly easy to find in the fandom of literally any character. Even if you were just looking up reference images of a random character in the show, you could easily find gore and not safe for work art. The fandom at this point was no longer a safe space for kids, and as time went on, the fandom's reputation got even worse, and even more gore animations were being introduced, like Shed.mov, My Little Pony: Friendship Was Magic, and more, and an alarming number of kids were traumatized by this kind of content. It was to the point where the fandom was beginning to become one of the most hated fandoms on all of the internet. Another thing that was infamous in the Brony fandom was not safe for work / Rule 34 art, animations, games, and fanfics of the characters. Basically, Rule 34 is the 34th rule of the internet, where if literally anything exists, there's going to be made of it. One of the examples of NSFW content was the fan game known as Banned from Equestria, or Banned from Equestria Daily, where you play as this red horse dude and interact with the different ponies. Of course, I'm not showing any of the content of the game in this video, as once again, YouTube's gonna thunderbolt my video straight into the Canadian sewer system if I do. So just take my word for what I said. This was around the time clopping was beginning to get popular in the fandom, clopping being the act of watching related to MLP. Yes, there are people who genuinely do this. Literally, what the heck kind of society do we live in? And unfortunately, kids saw this kind of content too. And honestly, at this point, you cannot convince me that this wasn't a tactic to groom an entire generation into becoming obsessed degenerates. However, thankfully at the Brony cons, they prevented people from showing this kind of content during the day, as that's usually when the kids are there. But at night, they're allowed to put up their NSFW stuff, as that's usually when the kids are either asleep or just back home. The last BronyCon was hosted in 2019, when attendance rates dropped by a lot, and the show was ending, and when the fandom wasn't really a mainstream topic anymore. Of course, the fandom is still alive and kicking these days, but they aren't as talked about as much as they were a couple of years ago, and the shock era of the fandom is pretty much over at this point in time. So this is basically the end to the most infamous era of one of the most despised fandoms on the internet. Anyways, that's it for today's video. I hope you guys enjoyed. If you did, be sure to hit that subscribe button, hit that like button, and I'll see you guys in the next video. See ya.